Hey, everybody, welcome to Build an Iconic Life. I am here with one of my longtime friends and somebody that I met on social media. And for years, we became like best friends and never actually physically met, partly because he lives literally on the other side of the country from me. I am literally on the East Coast and he is literally on the West Coast. But I really want you to pay attention because this man not only has an incredible story, uh, he's the kind of man that I want to do life with.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
Welcome to Build an Iconic Life podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whitehead, and this podcast is dedicated to help you build a life with zero regrets by focusing on how you have everything you need to stand up, stand out, and live life on your terms. Let's dive right in.
Max Nijst is with us today from Fearless Happyness. And Max, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to get on our podcast, bro.
Well, thank you for having me, Chris. It's already been an exciting morning, so I did not want to miss this. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you have a new family member coming, huh?
Yeah, well, for me, grandchild number 10. So that's the gray on here catching up, to Chris.
Dude, you are not old enough to have 10 grandchildren, man.
Yeah, I've got number 10. It will be here any minute. Life is exciting today. And, it's cool, Chris, is like you said, we met 12 years ago now and on social media. And little did I know that I would have a best friend that lived on the East Coast, right? But he did forget. I did get to hug him one time in a live event that we got to finally meet each other, and it's been great ever since. Like he's one of those guys that I could call on a 2-hour drive to work, and he would talk to me all the way to work. So I appreciate you, my friend.
Bro, we've done so much together. When we were on the come up, and we didn't really know what this whole social media thing was, but we both had it in our hearts that we wanted to really help people. And I remember I took you through activating my purpose. You were one of the first 3 people that ever even came through my program. It got to a place where you wanted to write a book and you just needed somebody to throw the mud against the wall. And we stood there, we sat there for 3 hours over the phone and just kind of came up with your outline by you telling me your story. It was actually the first time I ever heard the full story. And I remember when I was like, well, that's a whole chapter right there. And I was just like, wow, this dude has lived a really like incredible life and had some really low lows and some really high highs. And then it just kind of morphed into us being good friends. And like, if you were going through a struggle, I was always one of the first few people that you would call, and that meant a lot to me. And then when I started going through some struggle and I was willing to be vulnerable with you about it, because it really intimately aligns with what you do as a career as well as a passion, bro, you came back and shined that light right on me, and you didn't judge me. You gave me the same kind of advice, good friend advice. And I'm telling you, it helped me to be willing to look a little deeper into the mess that I had created. And everybody deserves friends like that, in my opinion. Everybody. And you've been that kind of friend to me, man. And now you're inside of Iconic, and I'm excited to help you even more with that. But what I'm really excited about, dude, tell everybody, like in the most truncated version you can, tell everybody where you started, a couple of the pivotal points along the way, and what you're in the process of doing now, brother.
How can I do that? Okay, thanks for bringing that up, Chris. Because so 19 years, I'll try to shorten and compact, right, what I've been through. So just to be funny though, I always say when I speak is I went to a party when I was 13 and I didn't get home till I was 32, and there was a lot of headache and heartache, right, in between. And as Chris knows my story, I've been in recovery for the past now over 19 years. Shoot, next September I'll be 20 years sober, clean and sober. And but what happened was, my first marriage, to kind of go through it quickly, was crumbling, fell apart. She had taken the kids out of state, and that was like my only glue that was holding me back together at that point, right? And when that was taken away, I didn't care, right? and I was too chicken to kill myself, but I did it on the installment plan, right? I was drinking heavily, stopped working. I was introduced to meth, and I became an intravenous drug user. So drugs and alcohol brought me down a bad path. And, kind of fast forward, it started out as fun. Then it quickly turned on me. I became homeless. And to tell you a little story, so when it started getting bad, right, my mom kicked me out of the house, right, because I was living with her at the time.
Tell him that moment. That was a smack me in the forehead moment.
Right. Well, there's been many moments. So the first time she kicked me out, it was one of those movie type things, right? It started raining. I'm walking around Orange County crying like a little baby, like, really, God? Like, it's raining on me. But here's the thing, right? Like, I would always give her those empty promises, because I hadn't seen the kids. So what happened? I started going to jail, right? You know my story. I started going to jail. I was looking at 3 years in prison. And the last time I got arrested, when I came back to Orange County, what Chris is talking about, my mom came to visit 2 weeks in, and she picked up the phone, right? She's looking at me across the glass. And before I could say a word, she says, "I love you, son, but you're no longer welcome at my home. And if you come near my home, I will call the police. And if my neighbors see you, they're going to call the police. What are you going to do?" And that was one of those pivotal moments where I just went, I don't know. And she started crying, and I'm like, "What are you crying for? I got to go back to a cell and you get to go home," And she's all, "That's like the best answer you ever gave me." And, I'm just going to forewarn you, I may get a little bit emotional because I've been up early, and you know what I mean? And Chris knows my story, where I came from with nothing, right? Being kicked out of mom's home, looking at 3 years in prison, to literally not seeing my kids for 9 years because drugs and alcohol took, that was my new lover, my new best friend. It was my coping mechanism. And, the guilt and shame that kicked in with all that was like, I can't even describe it. So that I'm, then I get sent to this place, right? It's like a treatment / sober living. And I had no idea what recovery was, right? Because, I said, you got to go to AA meetings, you got to find a job. And I remember just going like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes the talks we've had, I've looked at you like, okay, what does that mean? Like when you used to tell me, lean into the suck, right? Little did I know that I was starting that path back then. And I was just like, okay, you got to leave the place at 8 after the morning meeting, and you can't come back till 5. And then you got to show us that you actually look for work by showing us copies of your application, right? So you're talking to a guy that, right, went from like Xerox, right, when I was married for 8 years, suit and tie, briefcase type of guy, go to 9 to 5, loved what I did, to, and the white picket fence with 3 kids, to the streets in about a year. And so what happened was, right, when I'm going through this court process, and I'll skip to the last part, right, I'm thinking, okay, this judge is going to give me this sober living treatment / thing, maybe 90 days, 6 months, and I'll be back to what I'm doing. And as you know my story, a couple of times I told the judge, "No, you shouldn't send me there," or "You shouldn't do this." And they're just looking at me like, dude, like, your options are, you don't have any, right? So, because I'm thinking, right, he's all, "Yeah, I'm going to send you to this place, but I'm going to send you for a year." And like, part of me pondered, like, I can do 3 hots in a cot. I don't know what this recovery, do life on life's term thing, right? Become a contributing member of society. But thank God I kept my mouth shut that day. And it would lead me to meeting one of the most incredible people here, Chris, down the road. But what happened, what changed is that, right, as I relapsed 4 times in that place. And right, whatever doubt I had about a higher power or any whatever universe, the last relapse proved to me, right, there's somebody out there in this universe is watching out for me, because I was caught by the house manager. I was supposed to go test, and that would have been my 4th time, and probation would have been called. I would have been going to prison, right? But the director of the facility, who never comes on a weekend, happens to come on a Sunday and knocks on my door first and says, "Hey, Max, what's going on?" Like, she didn't know, and I told her the truth. And she said, "Get in your car, come back in 3 days and test clean," right? And then I told you that story where a friend of mine who was 2 years sober, right, told me, come over, stay at my apartment, with me and my fiance, and then go back in the morning. And, that was 3 days later. And I remember him coming out, right? And I'm still, right, like coming down from the meth use, and just my head's all over it. I remember he says, "Hey, Max, get on your knees." And I'm like, whoa, dude, wait a minute. Right. And I'm like, dude, your fiance's back that way in your room. And he's all, this is where idiot became my nickname for my first year of sobriety. We're going to pray together. And then I want to pray with you before you go back tomorrow morning. I was like, and that's why I have always told you it was the 26th. It was about 5 minutes to midnight. We said these prayers. He said a prayer for me. And, it was 12:10 or 12:10 on September 27th. And then that's been my sobriety date ever since. And I haven't had to change it. And then there's a lot of things that have happened in between as I found my way through this thing called recovery. But I got to tell you, here's the thing that happened for me. That last day I remember sitting as I was looking in the mirror, right? And I could see my life flash before me. I'm either going to die using or I'm going to go to prison. I had that conversation, right, with God. And I said, if you please help me stay sober, I'll do what you keep me sober. And I promise I'll do whatever it takes to stay sober. And it's been like that ever since. And Chris knows I've gone through, right, ups and downs. And right when I first met Chris and he took me through A&P, I told him, hey, Chris, I want to write a book. That was 12 years ago. And right, he would go, okay, all right. But you know me, and you and Lonnie I could hear it in your voice because I'd be all gung-ho, yep. And then I would disappear on you guys, right? New girlfriend or whatever. I was the great procrastinator. And, a lot of the people don't know, but some people do, right? Chris was going through a rough time, and he doesn't talk about it a lot, but he'll tell you that he was sitting in his apartment with about everything getting ready to shut off. But he took that 3 hours to sit with me. Little did I know, I didn't know this until later, and helped me write my outline. And then again, Max would disappear and do his thing for a few more years. And then fast forward, some of the toughest challenges I've gone through, and Chris has been there for me, and he knows this, is as a sober individual, right? Sober man is 6 years ago, my sister would pass away. 8 months to the day, my brother would pass away. And Chris was the second guy I called that day. And then 6 months to the day on Thanksgiving, my mom would pass away. And then that following Monday, I would put my daughter in treatment. And I remember every event I call Chris and he's like, oh my God, dude. Like, and then one day he asked me, he goes, Max, do you think you attract this stuff to you? And kind of got butthurt and looked at him like, I don't know who you think you are, but like, why would I want to attract this stuff to myself? And he just said, think about it. Right. And then remember, I showed up on a webinar or something that you were doing. And I said, yeah, you're right, Chris. Right. God had put me through that because he knew I could get through it and I'd have things to help other people get through what they need to get through, because I was strong. I became one of his warriors. Right. Because and Chris knows, as recently as 3 years ago, I would lose a granddaughter at 3 months and a day old. And then my son would almost die of a stroke like a week later. Right. And here's the thing about my journey. Right. And Chris knows I keep my circle very close and very tight. That's why Chris has been one of my best friends for 12 years. Because like we don't judge when we're going through stuff, right? He sat in on a 3.5 hour call with my wife one day, right? I just handed her to the phone. I go, this is going to be a while. Here, talk to Chris, right? We had a great conversation. But Chris has been there, and one of our late friends, Lonnie, are the ones that lit this entrepreneurial journey, that fire under me, right? And I think it's like almost 3 years ago now when you introduced me to another network, and I was like, I'm all in. And one thing I've learned is not to quit on myself. And I got that from Chris, right? Even though we'd have talks in the past and he would just give me that look and that tone, like, you're a knucklehead, dude. I'm trying to teach you something here. But I did pay attention, and I'm here. He helped me write that book. My brother took his life. I called him up and I told him what happened. And I said, Chris, we got to finish this book. And then him, Lonnie, and Brian K. Wright got together, helped me out, and here I am.
Bro, show that thing.
3 years
Show
later.
that thing again.
3 years, right?
Fearless
So
Happyness.
that's
my addiction, my battles, my recovery. That man in that photo is a soulless human being, bro.
Yep. And that's how I felt. But they say, and one thing I learned from you, right? Like all these things I've been through has helped create the man I am today, right? Because Chris knows we like whatever our top core value is integrity. If Chris says, Max, I need you to do this, he knows that I'm going to do it now. I'm not that procrastinator, the flaky friend he met 10, 12 years ago. And it's just like, it'd be like, tell me when and how, and I'll do it, Chris. That's all you got.
Bro, the reason why is because your self-image kept rising. Even, dude, I haven't met many humans. I mean, you kind of breezed through the latter part of that story. I kind of lived it with you.
Yeah.
I don't know many people that just keep getting handed shit over and over, that don't quit, that don't go back to old behavior. And every time we would get on the phone, you would be like, bro, this is about as much as I can take, but I'm so grateful I have my recovery program. I'm so grateful. And you kept, like, you didn't know what else to do other than go, I'm not going there. And it was like, what kind of asshole would I be to not be your friend, number one, but number two, to judge you through it? Because let me tell you, everybody, mine aren't the same. But the only thing I'm proud about is I didn't quit on me. And I've watched your self-image rise to the position of not just being someone that is in recovery, not someone that just speaks in the recovery realm, but someone that said, hey, I figured out something that I know other people are hurting from, and I'm willing to look foolish to get the message out. And that's one of the main things I'm proud about you for, and that I respect you for, because you don't pretend and you don't try to do things that aren't you, and you don't put it out sideways. You're like, and here it is, everybody. And I'm trying my best to communicate it with the words that I have, to let you know that there's hope, to let you know that you can overcome things. And I do believe that sometimes, I'm not sure why it happens this way, but it is what it is, folks. Sometimes people are put through things over and over and over again for them to find a singularity, so that other people don't have an excuse to keep doing it too if they really want to grow. And you've done that, and you've done it consistently. And I'm proud that you're my friend, man. I can't, because it came back to me. I just wrote a post this morning, bro, I got a DUI. I ran my truck into a tree, and it had to catch up with me. And I remember a year and a half or so before that, I'm on the phone with you, and I'm like, hey man, I might be doing this a little too much. Well, the answer was apparently so. But you didn't judge me. You just talked me through it, and you talked about my kids, and you talked about how I could work with it. And I wasn't quite ready to hear you, so I don't know who the knucklehead is and who the knucklehead isn't. But bro, friends help each other and don't let each other go. And I'm watching you do that with a community of people now. And I'm watching you take something and go, hey, let's put this marketing system to it so that we can just get more people aware of it. And I'll always support people that are real. That was my biggest thing. And I think it's what you are too. I was talking to Robin about this, man. Like, Pinocchio is an allegory that children look at to say, I don't want to be fake anymore. I want to be a real boy. And it's all the trials that he went through, getting donkey ears and everything, to learn how to just be a real boy. Right. And the thing that you and I both have that I want to touch other people with is, bro, I had Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder. Yeah. And you did too. And so I'm not proud of me. I'm not proud of the accomplishments. I'm proud I never quit, because I was able to hear Jiminy Cricket's voice and go, where did you say go? And he said, I said go left, Whitehead. And I'm like, well, that's left. And he goes, okay, Chris, that's definitely not left. Let's try it one more time. And you keep being a one more time human, Max. What's your inspiration, bro?
Wow, there's a lot, right? I think it started like it really kicked in, Chris, when back in 2020 when we started 75 Hard as a group. Remember?
Yeah.
And it was pre back surgery, and audience, I used to go numb from the waist down, like, and I would do videos on my walk, and I would trip, right? And I'd get up and go, "Yep, can't feel my legs, right? But I'm still gonna keep going, right?" And like examples like Chris, right? One of our members, admitted that they missed something, and we all agreed to. Well, some of us agreed to start over, right? And I was one of them. Chris was one of them, right? And Robin was one of them. Not everybody did, right? But we were like backdraft, right? You go, we go.
Yeah,
That's
no
how
man
this is
left
supposed to
behind.
work, right? And that's what I've learned from Chris and other mentors, right? And Chris, in all the years I've known him, has never left me behind. Like, he's taken off, but he's never gonna like, I'm too cool for you, Max, And so my inspiration, to get back to what you're saying, is people like yourself, my
Appreciate you, man.
family. You know what I mean? And I'll be honest with your audience, right? So I dropped Lisa off at the hospital, and I'm coming and I'm thinking about our interview today, and I get teary, right? Because you understand, like 19 years ago, people, if I would have told you, I would have been on Chris Whitehead's iconic talking about a book, uh, married to my best friend and my queen, and owning a home, and being a grandpa for the 10th time. I would have told you, whatever you're smoking or drinking, like, pass it my way, because that doesn't happen to a guy like me, right? And Chris knows I don't always talk about like the war stories, right? What I went through, and I talk about how I got through those challenges, right? Because I don't like to say problems or struggles, because I learned from Chris, right? If I look at it as a challenge, say it's a wall, right? Oh, I can't get through it. Well, then I'm going to get a ladder and get over it. That's what he taught me, right? Or I'm going to walk as far as I need to go around it, but I'm going to keep going forward, right? Because this gentleman here is one of those men that I look up to, that has always told me, never quit on yourself. Yes, I have a sponsor. He's been my sponsor for 19 years. There's two men. Well, there was three, but he's gone. And Steve. But there's like three of you, right, that I trust with my life. Like, hey, dudes, I need you. I know you would be there, right? Like, hey,
Yep.
Chris would be on a plane. So my inspiration comes from a lot of different places, but I want to show people that you never have to quit on yourself, that no matter what you go through, you can always get through it. I don't like to say get over it, but get through it and move forward and learn. Because my great friend Chris Whitehead would say, sometimes there's a lesson within that lesson you got to learn. And trust me, he's going to laugh. I'd give him this cross-eyed look, like, let's stick to one lesson, not a lesson within a lesson. But, I'm so grateful that I listened to him, right? Because, like, I'll tell you guys, my circle is, besides family, friends I have a very close circle of people that I trust. And, my mission is just to help as many people on the planet find their fearless happiness, right? Because Chris and I had that discussion where, are we truly going to be fearless? Maybe not, but are we going to fear less? Absolutely. And there's a reason I put the Y in happiness, right? Because I'm teaching people that you don't have to look outside of yourself for that happiness. It's right here. You got everything you need to be great today. And right. So,
dude, you just gave me goosebumps. My God. That is the ultimate truth. You're not going to find it outside of you until you learn how to be content with it inside of you.
Absolutely.
And you are a beautiful example of someone that refuses to work outside of your core values, man. It's one of the things that I respect the most about you, is that you've constantly refined and defined what they mean to you.
Yeah.
But you learned the hard way.
Yeah.
So did I.
Very much. Yeah, very much so.
Who am I if I'm not me?
Right.
And what I saw you do is I saw you claim you back from the clutches of everything that's evil, bro, and say, nah, I won't give up on me. And here we are, man. And you know what? We're getting older. We both have gray. You got quite a few more grandchildren than I do because I don't have any yet. But bro,
Right.
I'm just really proud of you. If people wanted to know how to get in touch with you, Max, what's the best way for them to reach you, man?
Well, there's a lot of different ways you could reach me. I'm on Instagram at Max Nijst _2022. Probably the best place is Facebook. You could DM me at max.nast on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn.
And
all
Nijst
the
is
other
Nijst, everyone.
correct, right?
Just so you
And
know.
yeah, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And exactly, it's max.nijst. And yeah, if you need to talk, and Chris knows, if you just need to talk, DM me. We'll have a conversation, and I'll help you any way I can.
Yeah, and what he hasn't said, and we got to go, everybody, but what he hasn't said, his literal profession has been as a substance abuse counselor, helping people go through, they're at their rock bottom. And he has a very delicate bedside manner with a small baseball bat behind him. And you get to determine which one of those you get, but he's very successful at helping people at interventions. He's very successful at helping people that are ready to make the choice. And he's very successful at sticking with people as long as they make that choice. And bro, that's why I wanted you on this podcast, because you represent everything that Iconic is. And everybody, you're going to be seeing more of this, man. So Max, before we sign off, you got anything left? One last thing you want to share with anybody?
Yeah, if I had one last piece of advice, and I don't know if anybody heard it, is remember that you have everything you need to be great today. It's inside. You just have to learn how to tap into it. And don't be afraid to help other people, because you'll benefit more than you could ever know.
Oh, planting those seeds of go-giving. We love you, everybody. We'll see you in the trenches. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Hey friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to catch future casts. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it so others can benefit from it as well. I'll see you in the trenches.